third of the world is doing unbelievably well. The bottom third of the world is doing really terrible. And the middle third is actually doing better than they used to be. But you can think about it like this. The life of the bottom third of the world's population, about 2 billion people, 2.5 billion people, their life is like this. Over the last 300 years, it hasn't changed very much. And in many cases, it's getting worse. In some cases, a little bit better, but it's pretty much close to a flat line. Meanwhile, the top third of the world's population, their wealth and their health and their longevity is just skyrocketing. So the gap between the richest third and the poorest third is growing wider and wider at an accelerating rate. When I wrote Everything Must Change, I wrote it in 2006, came out in 2007. When I wrote the book, the average CEO in a Fortune 500 company made 300 times as much as the lowest paid employee. The gap between the lowest and the highest salary was 300 to 1. Okay? If you go back to when I was a kid, it was about 12 or 13 to 1. So in my lifetime, it went from 12 or 13 to 1 to 300 to 1. Since then, now this might have changed in September, okay? But between 2006 and September 2008, it crossed 365 to 1. You understand what that means? The average CEO made as much in one day as the average employee, or sorry, as the lowest paid employee made in 1 year. So that gap, see, has been growing. It's growing within almost every country in the world. And it's growing between countries. So the gap between the United States and Haiti, the gap between the United States and Burundi, the gap between, so it's growing between countries, it's growing within countries. And when you have a crisis like that, that's what really creates human suffering. Because if everybody dies when you hit age of 54, let's hope this isn't true, but if everybody dies at the age of 54, and you know, we get sick at 53 and start fading away, we say, well, we've had a good life, you know. But if we know that across the border, everybody lives to 80, and on this side of the border, everybody only lives to 50, then we're going to be ticked off. And in fact, that's how it is, brothers and sisters. Baby was born. I don't think there's a Spring Arbor General Hospital, right? Where's the nearest hospital? Jackson? Okay, Jackson Hospital. Is there a maternity ward? So a baby was born in Jackson Hospital today. And mom and dad held the baby, and of course, dad doesn't really know how to hold it. But they hold the baby, and they love that baby. And it's like, any of you have experienced this, it's like this magic thing that happens. You bond to this baby. Your survival is less important to you than this baby's survival. I mean, it's an amazing thing that happens. Parents are bonding to that baby. Meanwhile, parents we're having a baby and bonding to a baby today in Haiti. Not that far away. And you know that baby that was born in Haiti today, it doesn't say it on his birth certificate, but it could say minus 35 years. Because the average baby born in America has 35 years coming to him that the baby in Haiti doesn't, or the baby in Honduras, or Sierra Leone, or Burundi, or Afghanistan. And in fact, you don't even have to go that far. All you have to do is go some hours from here to an Indian reservation. And a baby born on a Native American reservation today has decades less of average lifespan than somebody born outside. Bono said it this way: where you live should not determine whether you live. Where you have a baby shouldn't determine whether your baby will live. But it does. So, let's imagine you're a parent in Honduras, and you have that baby, and you love that baby. You love that baby more than you love yourself. And you know, if you could just get across that border, you could get your baby 20 or 30 more years of life. What would the moral thing to do be? Do you understand? What would you do if it was your baby? Just say, well, you know, it's illegal, so my baby will have 20 years less of life. Tough break. You know? I don't think you'd say that. So when you have a huge gap between rich and poor, so many things start happening. Anxieties are set into motion, dynamics are set into motion, and that brings us to the third crisis, the security crisis. And that's what happens when you have a huge gap like this. And then what happens is instead of the rich helping the poor, the rich buy more weapons to protect themselves. And they build up bigger walls to keep the poor away. And they build gated communities. And they build better security systems. And you know what the rich do? One of the ugliest, most horrible things the rich do, but they do it. They start selling weapons to the poor people so they'll fight each other. You know the top 5 weapon dealers in the world are the top 5 nations in the Security Council of the United Nations. You know the top weapons dealer in the world is the United States of America. And we sell weapons to both sides of many conflicts. It's what rich nations do. If you can keep the poor nations fighting against each other, it keeps them from fighting against you. But then you've got to make sure you have better and newer weapons than they do, and bigger and badder weapons than they do. And so what happens when everybody has more weapons? Do they all feel safer? And what happens when some of those weapons suddenly are the most powerful weapons ever invented? Nuclear bombs that we felt safe with because you needed only very few people could make them, and then you deliver them by airplanes. Oh boy, what happens when you can put a nuclear bomb in a suitcase? So when you take those first 2 crises of an unstable planetary system, environment, and you add to that this unstable economic system of the growing gap between rich and poor, and you add to that the proliferation of weapons, including weapons that go beyond our imagination and what they can do, then you've got a situation of real crisis. And that, I think, those are the 3 main crises. The prosperity crisis, we could call it the crisis of the planet. The equity crisis, we could call it the crisis of poverty. And the security crisis, we could call it the crisis of peace. So if you want 3 Ps, there you go, all right? Now here's what I want to do. I'm going to take 4 minutes, okay? And introduce yourself to somebody sitting next to you, 1 or 2 people sitting next to you. If you don't know them, this could be the beginning of something beautiful. But anyway, introduce yourself. And what I'd like you to do is just take 4 minutes and just try to summarize these 3 crises. See if you can put it in your own words to each other and introduce yourself. I'm only going to give you 4 minutes, though, so you have to jump right in. And if you see somebody around you who's left out, bring them in your little group. 4 minutes, okay? Jump in.